has taken over. Let's go. It's Ferrall. Coast to coast. Steaks, chicks, stacks. You and I are going to make a lot of money. It's Ferrall, coast to coast.
All right, Ferrall back on Coast to Coast. A reminder again, next week, all week, SportsGrid will be in Vegas for Super Bowl 58 at several locations, primarily the Radio Row at the Mandalay Bay where the fishes fly, February 5th through the 9th. I'll be broadcasting live all 5 days straight on Coast to Coast, 3 to 6 East, 12 to 3 West, at the Mandalay Bay where the fishes fly. And then, of course, Morency will be doing shows at the MGM. We're going to be doing all kinds of cool stuff. Right now, though, per usual on a Thirsty Thursday, we hook up with the mad scientist, Warren Sharp from sharpfootballanalysis.com and on X, Sharp Football. My guy, Warren, good to see you as we get ready to hook up in Sin City. I want to start with today a recap since I haven't talked to you since those title games. And I just want you to know that on the Kansas City game, I hit the Chiefs outright, Chiefs +4, the under 44.5, the Lions +7, and the over. The only bet I got wrong, the sixth bet I made, was outright Lions on the money line to win, and they were up 24-7, and I'm still hurling on my bib at the thought of the Lions choking the game away with terrible decision-making. Don't get me started on not taking those points and those field goals. I don't care where you went to college. I don't care if you're MIT proven. I don't care if you got PhDs. Every great team in history in the NFL Super Bowl era, you take the points. You take the points in championship games, Super Bowls. That's just all there is to it. That fancy fourth down stuff, that's street ball in the regular season. In the playoffs, you don't do that. What did you think of the games?
Well, if we start with the Ravens game, look, I thought that the Ravens were going to have success running the football here on the ground against the Kansas City Chiefs. And for them to not even really attempt that was the most perplexing thing of this game. I did not understand it from a game plan perspective. You know, you have, I think coaching is so vital in the NFL. It's more vital than most people consider. You have your game plan, and then you have your in-game adjustments. And you have to be great at both if you want to have a lot of success in the NFL, and especially offensively, because defense is a lot of reacting to what the offense might be throwing at you. So offense is so vital to come up with a very good game plan that's going to attack the weaknesses of the opponent while still maximizing some of the strengths of your own team. And I just felt like the Ravens completely didn't attempt to do this whatsoever. And then when it comes to the in-game adjustments, I mean, Lamar Jackson not having the best day throwing the football. It is raining. There are defenders all over his receivers. They're down in this game. Why, for the life of me, were they not encouraging Lamar Jackson to run the ball, to keep the ball on some of these plays where he's buying time, escaping the pocket, but then he's still kind of just trying to linger around behind the line of scrimmage to attempt a pass to a running back 3 yards away from him in the flat, as opposed to just keeping the football and getting 8, 9, 10 yards on the ground using his legs, potentially more than that. I didn't understand the in-game adjustments, but most of all, that what was perplexing was the game plan itself. Just was not attacking the weakness of this Chiefs team, which is on the ground, which we're not going to see, as we'll talk later about the 49ers. Kyle Shanahan stray from that whatsoever. I think they're going to be running the football early and often against this Chiefs defense, because that is how you have success there. But that was the most perplexing thing to me, not just of that game, not just of Championship Sunday, but probably in any big time playoff game. The biggest head scratcher to me from a coaching decision. And to this date, I haven't heard, naturally you don't really hear from Todd Monken. You don't really hear from the offensive coordinators much after the game, but I have not heard from Harbaugh as to why this team just decided not even to lean on the run game whatsoever at any point in the game. And keep in mind, the Chiefs only scored 17 points. At no point in this game was it out of control. At no point in the first half were the Ravens even down by more than one score when they had the football offensively. It just was mind-boggling.
when we welcome our radio affiliates, SiriusXM Channel 159 and Sports Byline and their affiliates. Good to have you with us. I'm talking to Warren Sharp on Coast to Coast on a Thursday per usual, and we'll see Warren out in Vegas next week. I'm stoked to see him. Now, here's the deal. In the third quarter, right, they started running Edwards, and they were throwing it in the flat, the hill, and they were gaining big yards. And then they had, the big play to Flowers where he went down and taunted the guy. And then you had the Flowers fumble at the 1 foot line. It was the only time in a game that they actually did what you were talking about. They started running, and it was working around the left side. They were getting big, huge chunk yards, and then they still didn't stick to it, even though it was working. It was idiot hour. When I was doing the game with Morency, he was like saying literally on the air that Moncton's the worst human being on earth, that he's a terrible offensive coordinator. He was screaming it the whole day. He's like, he's awful. His brother's better, stuff like this. And all I know is that no one, it's to me, can beat this guy Mahomes. I don't care what your game plan is. This guy goes into a big game and he just wins. And I said on the air that he can win by himself with a center, snapping him the ball, no offensive line, just one center, no receivers, no tight end, no cheerleaders, no coach. He'd still find a way to win the game against 11 guys on the other team. I mean, he's unbelievable.
Well, he's absolutely unbelievable. But here's the thing that I don't think gets discussed enough, so let's give him his flowers right now. Steve Spagnuolo, we know that it's so important to pair a great quarterback with a great play caller / head coach. Most of these great play callers end up being promoted to head coaches. So that's why we refer to them play caller, head coach. That can't go understated. And like Patrick Mahomes, to be with a guy like Andy Reid, to be calling this offense at a high pass rate, doing everything, pushing all the right buttons is absolutely incredible. Mahomes is so blessed to be in that dynamic. However, the thing that gets lost on a lot of people is you got Steve Spagnuolo, one of the most creative defensive minds. We're going to talk about him later on in the show a little bit more. And he's not going out for head coaching interviews. He's creating one of the most creative game plans week in, week out to limit opponents and to really, look at the stretch that he ran in the playoffs, limiting the Dolphins offense and the Bills offense and now the Ravens offense. He's got to try to do the same thing against this 49ers offense. And to have him there and have him not get another head coaching gig and to have him stay there as the defensive coordinator, it's vital to be able to have that because this team is built totally differently than the San Francisco 49ers from a cap perspective. And we'll talk about that again as well down the stretch here.
Yeah, there's no doubt that he's great. And we've seen that before. And then he went to Kansas City, and he's done it there repeatedly. And now he's going to do it against the same team that they played 4 years ago in the Super Bowl. And I'd imagine he's up to his shenanigans right now, game planning to shut something down that works for San Francisco mightily. And they're going to take that away from him. He's a lot like Belichick in the ability to take it away from a team. When we come back, I want to talk about this Lions meltdown in the second half. I've never seen anything like it. It was truly unbelievable. And no field goals, went for it on all these fourth downs. We're talking to Warren Sharp, getting ready for Super Bowl 58 in Las Vegas. This is Coast to Coast. Don't go anywhere.
Thought that Mike would maybe go in a different direction or at least listen to some people with some different ideas.
If you were going to retain Mike Tomlin as coach, and I believe with both feet that you shouldn't let him really anywhere near this hire. That he had proved over the years that this was not an area of comfort or expertise for him.
Ferrall Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Oh, it's a beautiful time. NBA players are going wild. If I had to guess, a lot of people are going to get real angry. No defense, no defense, no defense. See, I want people to understand this, okay? Because we're always honest. When I take that big pause, that means we're thinking about betting big.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
Well, look at the Heisman Trophy.
The early line.
And what it all means. Individual success.
You should have tried to get something for Anthony Rendon. Not bought at the deadline.
Newswire.
We're getting a lot of news, trades, cuts, and some movement in terms of starting quarterbacks,
Ferrall,
backup quarterbacks.
coast to coast.
I want to watch great players make buckets and win games.
Game time decisions.
I have no idea what the heck the Blazers are doing and what they
In-game live.
Just
prime
took them
time.
yard for a grand slam.
The bottom of the fourth inning in a 12-2 baseball game. We got football scores going on at Wrigley right now.
Sports late night.
We waited for the 1.5. We got paid
We
information. Didn't like the 2.5. Jumped on
There's
it.
no taking weeks off in golf betting ever. These are the best weeks to bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
So we're talking to Warren Sharp, our lead analyst of the NFL on SportsGrid, and we hook up with Warren every Thursday on Coast to Coast, and you see him on the network throughout the week doing other things, a Sharp Report, et cetera. He's a badass. All right, so what was your reaction to the Lions' second half meltdown? Because I have to tell you, my language was deplorable in my house. Thank God Granny made shepherd's pie that night, because if it wasn't for that, I would have ruined the evening with all of my cussing and temper tantrums. And it's not good, as you know, for my heart that just exploded and I had a fake heart put in. It's not good for me to be at a level 15 when it says I should be at a level 7, and I'm screaming and yelling and turning purple and cussing at Dan Campbell.
Well, at least you know the comfort food that's going to hit the right button there to prevent that from happening. Anytime, just have that shepherd's pie, like frozen,
awesome,
ready to zap into the microwave at a moment's notice anytime a game's going against you. But for certain, I was shocked at how they gave up that lead, especially because they had success running the football, and they are so good at running the football. And you would have assumed that they could have continued to run the football late in that game. And I really think it came down to that fumble by Gibbs, setting up that short field. If there's no fumble by Gibbs, I don't think this game goes the same way. I think the Lions are the team that we're talking about here, advancing to the big game. But instead, of course, it's the 49ers. And look, I thought the 49ers dug themselves into a hole on their own by running the ball far too much with Christian McCaffrey early on in this game against such a great run defense of the Detroit Lions. There was no need to do that. And these runs were averaging like 2.9 yards per carry in the first half. Just mind-boggling, again, decision from Kyle Shanahan to come out with, I know that, and we'll talk about it about when we break down the big game, but we know that the 49ers are one of the most run-heavy teams. They're the second most run-heavy team in the NFL. But how do you not adapt your game plan when you're going up against a defense that's horrific against the pass, but excellent defending the run like the Detroit Lions are? So I thought the 49ers played a role, play calling-wise, digging themselves into the hole like they did early on in that game. It certainly shows that this 49ers defense isn't as great, I think, as some people think that it is, with the way that the Lions were able to move the ball, especially Jared Goff playing outside, playing outdoors. Like, there were all these discussion points about that and how he was going to struggle mightily. And this Lions team was moving up and down the field on this 49ers defense early on in that game. So unfortunate. I mean, the Lions literally shot themselves in the foot in this one. If they make one of those fourth downs, if they don't fumble the football, like, they're the team that we're talking about this week.
So just so you know, Warren, his information is so money that he literally flies private to Las Vegas to the Super Bowl, and the rest of us have to go stand in line at the airport. His analytics and skinny and information is so valuable that he has flown by himself on a private jet, and he has bottles of Veuve Clicquot on ice with large chunks of sharp cheddar cheese on a plate with Ritz crackers as he laughs looking out the window and yelling instructions to the pilot and the one stewardess. And I might say she's 6'2", a tall cup of water. All right, let's talk about how these teams have been built. Certainly different in the salary cap and the way they have structured these two teams, the Chiefs and the 49ers.
It's remarkable. I mean, these are two total opposites. The Kansas City Chiefs are devoting the largest cap space to any player this year in terms of Patrick Mahomes, whereas Brock Purdy, I think he's quarterback 68. I mean, you look at, he's cheaper than Logan Woodside, Sam Ehlinger, Skylar Thompson, Easton Stick, among others. And then the other thing that isn't getting enough discussion is the way that they also restructured when they signed Christian McCaffrey last year, his deal. So instead of hitting the cap for like top $5, top $4 like he normally would, this year Christian McCaffrey is running back 18. He's hitting the cap for only $3.4 million. So his cap hit is much lower than normal. You got a quarterback who's hitting the salary cap for less than $900K because he's Mr. Irrelevant. It's just a perfect scenario for the San Francisco 49ers to have a lot of talent spread out around the rest of this roster because they can afford to spend a little bit more at some of these key positions, thanks to the fact that their biggest engine offensively in terms of Christian McCaffrey is so cheap this year compared to what he should be making. And they've got production out of a quarterback. And that's one of the biggest skeleton keys in the NFL, as we know over the last, decade or more, is paying a quarterback less, but getting a lot more production out of him. And, for a while, Tom Brady wasn't taking market value staying in New England. He was getting paid a little bit less and delivering obviously a lot more. And a lot of the rookie quarterbacks that end up making it to the Super Bowl, rookie deal quarterbacks, I should say, that make it to the Super Bowl is because their salaries are so cheap and their cap hits are so cheap, and allows the team a lot more flexibility. So you've got the 49ers are built that way. And the Kansas City Chiefs are built the exact opposite way, so top heavy with so much of their salary cap being allocated to Patrick Mahomes. The biggest thing to me, and that's why this Super Bowl is going to matter so much here, is the coaching. And we talked about it before, and we'll talk about it later again. But Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo, that partnership, that pairing is what, if anything, is going to get this Kansas City Chiefs across the finish line, because they're going up against a Niners team that does have more talent from top to bottom. They don't have as good of a quarterback, but they have more talent spread out around that roster.
Yeah, and that kid's going to find a basket in front of his house next year, I would think, or whenever. He's going to get paid. He's going to make more money. I know he's making no money now, but those days are coming to an end when you take him to the Super Bowl. And his first full season is this year. Last year, he came on, got injured against the Eagles. That was the end of him. But this year has been his real breakthrough year, and they're going to have to pay him no matter what. So what about their paths to this point? Like, you look at what Kansas City did to Miami, Buffalo, and then Baltimore, and what San Francisco's had to do, because they had the same advantage as Baltimore. They had to play a divisional semi and a title game. And I thought they should have lost in the divisional semi. Green Bay blew the game. Carlson and Love's horrible pick late. They could have easily, in my opinion, the way he played in that game, marched down the field and had another crack at a field goal to tie it and send it to overtime, and they blew that too. So San Francisco got in. You're down 17 points at the half in a title game at home, and yet you're going to the Super Bowl. It's crazy.
It is crazy. But the thing that I'm going to back up even before that, what is so different to me about this Chiefs team than we've seen in years past is how they've had to go through this. I wrote over the summer, because I do a lot of studying about the NFL schedule. The schedule makers decide when you're going to play all of these opponents. They don't decide who, but when. And the Kansas City Chiefs, for I believe it was 6 straight weeks, faced a rest disadvantage from week 12 through week 17. No other team had done that before in history. We saw them be at a rest disadvantage in every single one of those games. In totality, from week 12 onward, they faced a total of negative 20 days net rest disadvantage over the back half of their schedule. They had their bye in week 10 that was after playing over in Germany. So it's not even like a normal bye, which is, you get to be at home, or maybe you're on the road, you fly back home, a short flight, you get a week off, and then you're playing again. Here they're flying all the way back from Germany. That's part and eating into their bye week right there. And then they go on this run of consistent games that they have to play at a rest disadvantage. They go into it and they don't get a first round playoff bye, which is one of the first times that that's happened to them as well. So they have to play in the wild card round. Then they have to go on the road each of the last 2 weeks playing top 5 teams in terms of the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, the gauntlet that this Kansas City Chiefs team has gone up against has been ridiculous. The fact that they now get this break, I think, is going to be more impactful to them having the bye than it helps the San Francisco 49ers, just because of what the Kansas City Chiefs has had to go through. And to your point, in this Niners team, they got that bye in the first round. They didn't have to play a wild card game. And then they're playing 2 teams from the NFC North in the form of the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers, neither of which have, upper echelon teams. They're good upstart teams that were making something of themselves, but they weren't pegged to be elite this year. Just a very different path for both of these teams to reach this point.
When we come back, we're going to look at some of the Super Bowl numbers and props that Warren has his eyes on. It's Warren Sharp from Sharp Football Analysis on Coast to Coast.
Oh, it's a beautiful time. NBA players are going wild. If I had to guess, a lot of people are going to get real angry. No defense, no defense, no defense. See, I want people to understand this, okay? Because we're always honest. When I take that big pause, that means we're thinking about betting big.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Purdue on the road in a very difficult place to win in Piscataway, New Jersey. Not in Jersey Mike's Arena, but in the rack. And it was tight.
You still have to win these games. Like, you can talk about even equate it to the NBA. Like OKC just rolling into Detroit going, yeah, this is going to be an easy victory, and not coming away with the W because you're not focused here. Good move there for the Purdue Boilermakers. You can take a look at Zach Edey.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
The Chiefs end up winning outright as a 4.5-point underdog at kickoff last week. They're headed back to the Super Bowl yet again. They were phenomenal, Vinny, in the first half, and they were phenomenal against Miami in the first half, too.
A lot of motivated players, and look, you got to hand it to them. Youthful players playing in a great system by Spagnuolo, and we know how great of a big game coordinator Steve Spagnuolo is.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
I can tell you, like, Las Vegas is heavy San Francisco territory. All right, there are a ton of Niner fans, man, in Las Vegas and in Nevada, and specifically Reno. Reno's close, obviously, right? So, like, Reno's numbers will be a little bit different, but the total of 47.5. I get it.
Sports Rage Late Night. Only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
We'll look at the Heisman Trophy
The early line.
and what it all means. Individual success.
You should have tried to get something for Anthony Rendon. Not bought at the deadline.
Newswire.
We're getting a lot of news, trades, cuts, and some movement in terms of starting quarterbacks,
Ferrall,
backup quarterbacks.
coast to coast.
I want to watch great players make buckets and win games.
Game time decisions.
I have no idea what the heck the Blazers are doing and what they
In-game live.
Just
Prime
took 'em
time.
yard for a grand slam.
In the bottom of the fourth inning in a 12-2 baseball game. We got football scores going on at Wrigley right now.
Sports Rage
That was
Late
good betting.
Night.
We waited for 1.5. We got paid
We
information. Didn't like the 2.5. Jumped on
There's
it.
no taking weeks off in golf betting, ever. These are the best weeks to bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The brighter the lights, the bigger the stakes. Hunt or be hunted. Know your prey. This is a whole new jungle. This is The Lion's Share. Brought to you by BetMGM.
You know, they're getting ready at the MGM. BetMGM app is the greatest thing ever. And they're giving away $158 if you bet $5. You heard me. Bet 5, get $158 in bonus bets immediately with the bonus code SG158. Place your first wager with the BetMGM app for $5 standard odds price, and you're going to get $158 instantly, no matter what happens with the wager. Just download the app on iOS or Android, or go to BetMGM.com. Deposit money in your account, place the bet, and then you're going to get your $158. You're going to love life, and you're going to love the BetMGM app. You just keep using it forever. So everyone that's on it loves it. You're good to go. They're constantly having great promotions, constantly giving away money to bettors, and it's just a great relationship. It's like having a side piece. Wait, are we on the air? Don't talk about chicks and okay. Anyway, also I wanted to inform you that Warren is so popular that he is still yet to refuse to admit that he knows me publicly. This year at the Super Bowl, we will force Warren with strong arm tactics to admit knowing Ferrall. Like, he's so famous now that, like, when I'm with him around the Super Bowl time, he avoids me like you'd think I had, like, you know, some kind of disease or something. This year, we have a plan. Coffee Kofsky and I will strong arm Warren Sharp into admitting that he knows me publicly. He's looking at me right now. He's like, what is happening with this guy on the show? I don't even understand it. All right, let's look at the early Super Bowl numbers and props. You have some things you want to go through. Can we start with, well, whatever you want. If you want to do game odds, then passing, then rushing, then receiving, and MVP, we can do it that way. Whatever you're into, Warren.
Yeah, let's just run through it. We got some boards for these built. Look, the game odds, the biggest thing that's most interesting to me about this one is we see the spread flashed up here on the screen and where we're sitting at right now. It's just going to be interesting to see if we're going to get any more of that anti-Chiefs money that came in so strongly last week on the Baltimore Ravens and push that number. I mean, a lot of people didn't think that, okay, we're not going to get anything better than 3.5 here. Let's get the Chiefs right now. We can get them at 3.5. Wait, now it's up at 4. Well, let's get them at 4. It can't get any better than that. Well, now it's going to 4.5. And then it ultimately goes up to 5. It's like crazy the amount of money that came in late against the Chiefs on the Ravens. And some of those people who were betting the Ravens big probably felt like, hey, look, if Zay Flowers doesn't fumble this ball, we might win this game. Like, this should have been the Ravens side here, even though I believe that they're probably wrong in that case. The Ravens would have had to change their whole offensive tactics, in my opinion, to make them be the right side. We'll never know at that point. But the point is that those same people might be ending up coming in here on the San Francisco 49ers at some point. I would be surprised if we saw 3, but I was also surprised to see 4.5 or 5 last week.
I mean, when it got to 5, I was like, they're going to lose a ton of money, because I got it at 4. And I got to be honest with you. When I was watching Mahomes and Spags' defense, we were on the air together, Morency and I, and it was, he escaped the sack, Jackson, threw the bomb to Flowers, tied it up at 7. And Morency's going on about this is going to go. It went to 53.5 in-game, the total. And I said, they're not going to score anymore in this game. They're not going to score another touchdown in this game. Spagnuolo's going to adjust, and it's going to stay under. And it did. Not that I know anything, but I really felt that they both had great defenses, and at some point they were going to stiffen up, and they did. So at the beginning of the game when I was betting, I thought to myself, I go, how can you give this guy, Mahomes, 4 points? You have got to be kidding me. And when it went to 5, I know the people in Vegas that moved it to 5. I know what house did that. I mean, they got cleaned out.
Well, I also know, as you're relating to the total here, like, the tough part about this total is the fact that in the second half of these games, the Chiefs play totally differently. I mean, they are not scoring points, nor are they allowing points. They're relying on their defense so much in the second half, and they are so bad offensively when they are trailing in the second half of games, because they end up trying to push the ball down the field. And on passes thrown 10 plus yards down the field. They're the worst offense in the NFL this year. They are not good at passing the football deeper down the field. So the way that they have to matriculate the ball, even when they're losing, causes them problems for getting back into some of these games. They don't score as many points. And then when they're winning, I believe in the second half, if not the fourth quarter, their average target depth, their ADOT, is only about 1.8 yards on these passes. They're throwing everything short, a lot of stuff behind the line of scrimmage. It makes it difficult. They're in a lot of third and long situations. Mahomes might make magic happen once or twice. But other than that, I mean, they're probably going to be punting the ball back sooner rather than later and playing field position and relying on their defense, which is the big reason why so many of their games go under the total, especially in the second half.
What about the passing props for this game now?
Yeah, so I think we were looking at the most passing yards, and naturally it's going to be on Patrick Mahomes. Both of these teams have some advantages running the football, so that's going to be the biggest thing. I believe that whichever team is going to be in the lead is probably going to be able to rely even more on that run. No shocker there. So it's odd that Patrick Mahomes has more passing yards than Brock Purdy, because Purdy might be in the lead here. Mahomes might be trailing, and thus I guess that is obviously the logic. Mahomes is going to be passing the ball because he is the underdog. So that's why he's favored to have more passing yards. The Chiefs also pass the ball just at a much higher rate than do the San Francisco 49ers. So Purdy might have a couple of explosives here and there. And I do think when we talk about some of these wide receivers, they're going to be able to shut down or limit a little bit of the stuff that's going to Brandon Ayuk. It's going to force some things to have success over to George Kittle or Deebo Samuel, etc. But certainly I think that even the Chiefs, though, they're going to need to run the football. Both of these offenses are going to need to attack the weaknesses of their opponent, and that's on the ground. The passing game should be a complement to that, but they have to get the run game established here.
Well, I thought Ayuk killed him. He caught the ladybug pass off the guy's face mask. Then he caught the touchdown on third down in the back left side of the end zone. I thought he killed him. Frankly, I don't think Kittle did anything in that football game at all. So
that's because they weren't throwing it.
Game.
I didn't understand that either. Why weren't they throwing in the football? I didn't understand that from training.
Look what the Chiefs did with Kelsey. Christ, he must have had 1,000 yards in that game. He caught so many passes. So as far as rushing, I got to tell you what I was surprised at, seeing Brock Montana take off running 2 or 3 times and having giant chunks of yards. And I saw his number in this game is like really low. For him to take off running. He's not a guy that does that, but he sure did in that game against the Lions.
Yeah, he did. And that was surprising. They obviously elevated his prop number because of the running that he did last week. But this is smart. This is what more teams need to do. They need to encourage their quarterbacks. It's no shot against the quarterback's ability to play that position or go through their progressions. If you see a way to get 8-9 yards, slam dunk, because there's a run lane that's open, I can guarantee you on average that is the better play with plus EV to make that play than it is to try to sit in the pocket and read out the defense and go to your second, third option and then try to have success that way. Just take the yardage that's there, especially when you see that run lane open. It literally is the most efficient play in football.
So we all know how good McCaffrey is. And then there's this guy Pacheco. He's an animal. He's an animal. Like he reminds me of Gibbs with his violence, the way he runs the ball with just absolute, unrelenting passion. Like he'll run through a wall. He's not afraid of hits, shots, you name it. And trying to bring him down is another problem altogether. McCaffrey to me is holes, finding holes, and speed. The other guy is just a savage.
Yeah, and McCaffrey's justifiably favored here. It's in large part because of just how much they rely on him. One of the props that I bet last week was Christian McCaffrey under 20.5 rushing attempts. And, it ended up winning, but it got there by the skin of the teeth because that game was so close, and thankfully they put in Eli Mitchell at the very end of it. But I didn't understand why they were running McCaffrey so much in the first half when it wasn't successful. That should tell you something, that Kyle Shanahan is going to be sticking with Christian McCaffrey and running this football early and often against the defense in the Chiefs. It's one of the best defenses against the pass, but definitely below average against the run. We're going to see a lot of Christian McCaffrey early and often in this one, and especially if the Niners end up playing with a lead, which the line indicates that they should, we're going to see a little bit less Pacheco down the stretch.
What about receiving yards in the Super Bowl?
So this one is a lot more balanced, and the one guy who currently has the lowest number here on the screen at BetMGM is Brandon Ayuk, and I would steer a little bit clear of Brandon Ayuk. I just feel like there's better cases to be made for some of these other guys. And I know that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to continue to go back to their number one receiving option, and that's Travis Kelce. But the way that they play off script with Kelce and the way that Mahomes, when flushed, ends up targeting Kelce is uncanny. But the Niners have been decent against tight ends, and they obviously should realize that our path to victory in this game is just shutting down Travis Kelce if possible. And for these reasons, I'd be looking at like an auxiliary guy, not Kelce and not Ayuk. I'd be looking at somebody else in this game to potentially get a few of those deeper targets, get a few of those passes that end up breaking something open.
Yeah, like if I'm the Niners, the game plan's pure and simple. I don't know if it's Warner or Greenlaw. One of the two of them has to shut down Kelce. If they let this guy, what Baltimore let him do, if they let that happen, they're going to lose the Super Bowl. If they shut him down, Kansas City will have a big problem on their hands. When we come back, we'll look at the MVP odds and keep rolling with Warren Sharp. Get his sharpfootballanalysis.com site going in your life.
The Lion's Share, presented by BetMGM.
I kind of thought that Mike would maybe go in a different direction, or at least listen to some people with some different ideas.
If you were going to retain Mike Tomlin as coach, and I believe with both feet that you shouldn't let him really anywhere near this hire. That he had proved over the years that this was not an area of comfort or expertise for him.
Ferrall Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Oh, it's a beautiful time. NBA players are going wild. If I had to guess, a lot of people are going to get real angry. No defense, no defense, no defense. See, I want people to understand this, okay? Because we're always honest. When I take that big pause, that means we're thinking about betting big.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
Well, look at the Heisman Trophy.
The early line.
And what it all means. Individual success.
You should have tried to get something for Anthony Rendon. Not bought at the deadline.
Newswire.
We're getting a lot of news, trades, cuts, and some movement in terms of starting quarterback,
Ferrall,
backup quarterback.
coast to coast.
I want to watch great players make buckets and win games.
Game time decisions.
I have no idea what the heck the Blazers are doing and what they
In-game live,
Just
prime
took 'em
time.
yard for a grand slam.
The bottom of the fourth inning in a 12-2 baseball game. We got football scores going on at Wrigley right now.
Sports Rage
That was
Late
good betting.
Night.
We waited for the 1.5. We got paid.
We did.
Didn't like the 2.5. Jumped on
There's
it.
no taking weeks off in golf betting ever. These are the best weeks to bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, so Warren, your thoughts on MVP odds at this point before next week's, countdown to the kickoff on Sunday the 11th, between these two teams. Who do you like?
Once again, I think if it's the Chiefs, it's going to be very difficult to not give it to Patrick Mahomes. I think that's basically a slam dunk unless the defense limits the San Francisco 49ers to something like 13 points, 10 points, and Mahomes does not have a good game. But if it's the Niners, and there's so much discussion about Brock Purdy and what he is doing for this team that I really do believe, Kyle Shanahan seems like it's written in his contract that he must give Christian McCaffrey at least one rushing touchdown every single game, if not two. And if Christian McCaffrey ends up having a couple rushing touchdowns, Brock Purdy throws an interception, and the Niners end up winning this game, I think there's a very good chance that we might see a running back. I think the last time that we saw that was Terrell Davis. So we might see a running back win this one if you're looking to back the 49ers. The key is obviously you don't want to bet the MVP market until you handicap the game and figure out who you think is going to win the game.
Fair enough. All right, let's do a breakdown of these teams, and we'll start with Kansas City first.
Yeah, so we talked about the way that these teams are built, the paths to the Super Bowl, how they've been very different. When you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, they obviously have Steve Spagnuolo. We know that he is such a big key to help this team in their success. The one thing that the Chiefs do struggle with, though, is they struggle against play action. And the 49ers need to lean into a lot of play action offensively. That is one of the, if the Chiefs are really good defending the pass, their one weakness is against play action passing. And if I'm the 49ers, I'm leaning a little bit more into play action passing. The other thing that the Kansas City Chiefs do very well, though, is they have a lot of success defending outside zone. Ironically enough, defensively, that's one of the things that the San Francisco 49ers lean into when they run the football. The San Francisco 49ers utilize the most outside zone second most outside zone of any team in the NFL. And they're very successful when they utilize outside zone. This is the best rushing team in the NFL, Scott, is the San Francisco 49ers. And that's not shocking. But what is shocking is just the manner in which they are accomplishing their outstanding success on the ground. Not only do they rank number one in EPA per rush, number one in yards per carry, number one in success rate, but they are also on early downs, first three quarters of games, the most loaded boxes of any team in the NFL. So they're having this success rushing the football against the most difficult scenario to run the football, which is against loaded boxes. And I went back and looked all the way through as far as my records can take me using True Media data back to 2000 to see, is there a team that has had the level of success and efficiency, whether it was on a success rate or an EPA per play, running the football as.
All right, so I think we lost Warren there for a second. Staggering development. And I was just thinking about this Kansas City team when he was talking about him, when we're talking about Spagnuolo, right, is the fact that you can look at this team from like the fact that they lost Gay. Now they've lost another guy that tore his ACL. And, they still go out and win games. It's crazy. Thuney's not playing, right, with the pec. He didn't play in the games. They still plug and play. They stick another guy in there, and they get the job done. Are you surprised, Warren, and I know I lost you for a second, technically speaking. But now that you're back, I just want to jump on the fact that they've had, before the game, they're like, Thuney's out, Gay's out. They've got nothing but problems. Now they've got another one of their pass rushers tears his ACL. Done. But they plug and play. They get guys to go in there for Thuney, for Gay, and they still win. Does that not blow your mind at their ability to put anyone out there and still execute at a high level without really any kind of discomfort?
Yes, certainly they have had to overcome a lot from an injury perspective, and that's where coaching comes into play because you have to have these backups ready for their roles. Now, you can't have terrible players, otherwise it becomes more of a challenge. But Steve Spagnuolo is putting these guys in the right positions to have success here. And, they've gone up against team like the 49ers previously. They obviously played the 49ers back in 2019, learned some lessons from that. I've had and seen them since. But also the other factor here, Scott, that I think is interesting is that there's only been a couple of other teams to face as many plays from 21 personnel or 22 personnel, the two back sets, then the Kansas City Chiefs defense. They actually have a ton of experience going up against defenses. One of the biggest tenets that I have in football when I'm talking to different coaches is do something differently and do it really well, because then you're going to take teams that aren't used to what you're doing and they're not going to be able to defend it nearly as well as you are from being prepared to play it over and over, because that's the base style of your offense. And with the 49ers, it's a lot of the 21 and 22 personnel, the heavy formations with multiple running backs. Well, fortunately, if you're looking at the Kansas City Chiefs defense, they have actually played 13 games against teams that utilize two back sets at the 13th highest rate. They just played the Dolphins in the playoffs. They use it at the second highest rate. They just played the Ravens, who use it at the third highest rate. So now they're taking on the Niners, who use it at the highest rate. But they have this unique experience with the way that their schedule has played out, where they've had a lot of opportunities to get reps in games against teams that have multiple running backs out there on the field that can only help them a little bit.
Menahu tore the ACL. He had a strip sack of Lamar Jackson in that AFC title game. How much does that hurt them losing that? A guy with 7 sacks on the season, and he even missed, I think, a 6-pack of games early in the season. But he was playing great football up until the point where he tore the ACL. And then Gay didn't play. I think that was more precautionary. My guess is he'll be playing. I still don't buy that Thuney will go with the pec problem.
I agree with you on all fronts. I think Gay should be up for this one. I would doubt if Thuney is there. And definitely Omenahu, his loss is going to be felt. Losing edge rushers who can, create a turnover potential for you in a big game, a championship game, or a game like this one is massive. And, those little plays end up being the difference in some of these games. So you can't understate that, but I believe that the way that Steve Spagnuolo will now have 2 weeks to game plan and is aware that he's going to be out. This is not one of those injuries for Menahu who's, will he be able to go? Will he be able to go? But he's only going to be at 60%, but we'll still probably try to get him out there. We know he's not going to be there. So let's make life and a game plan designed with his absence incorporated into that. I think that they're going to be able to do just a fine job in doing that.
So the Niners, all right, you're having a problem dealing with Spags. You have to worry about what he's doing to construct a plan to stop you. They're an elite secondary, Snead and company. I mean, watching Lamar Jackson try to throw deep balls in that game with the corners and safeties running in stride like horses with the receivers and not having any PIs at all because they never touched them, never had to. That's how good they are. Is that going to be a problem for the Niners? And the fact that they have, a struggling run defense right now. The Lions did whatever they wanted to them on the ground. They did whatever they wanted to them in the air. I mean, I think the Niners secondary sucks.
The Niners definitely are not nearly as good of a defense as they were when Hufanga was out there. I also think from a coaching perspective, they've lost a lot of really elite defensive-minded coaches who have gone to take over roles as head coaches in other cities. We see D'Amico Ryans, who's the most recent one last season. So this team, I think, is struggling on that side of the football. And it's part of the reason why I think Kyle's going to come out here and try to help his defense by utilizing and leaning a little bit more into the ground game with Christian McCaffrey. Ironically enough, if you look at the surface level numbers, it looks like the Chiefs are going to struggle against the 49ers rushing attack. And then especially when you go into personnel groupings and you see two running back sets, the 49ers are the best rushing offense in the NFL using two running back sets. Meanwhile, the Kansas City Chiefs rank 30th in virtually every single metric defending multiple running back sets, specifically 21 personnel, which is what the 49ers use a lot of with Kyle Juszczyk out on the field. They're 30th defending that. But the interesting part is when the 49ers run the football out of their 21 personnel, they like to use a lot of outside zone. And ironically, that is one of the areas that the Chiefs are actually good defending. They're not quite as good defending 21 personnel runs using man blocking concepts, using inside zone blocking concepts, some of these other concepts, but they are quite good defending outside zone. They still rank like just above league average, not longer number 30th. So I think that's going to be one of the areas that we're going to need to get success from this Chiefs. They can't get clobbered on the ground. They have to do a good enough job of limiting McCaffrey, and I believe that that's probably going to be the game plan that Spagnuolo comes in with. Make Brock Purdy beat me, especially if he can beat me without using Brandon Ayuk as much. Make Brock Purdy beat me with Kittle. Make Brock Purdy beat me with Samuel. And trust me, Brock Purdy can beat you with those auxiliary weapons. I mean, this offense is good enough and well-designed enough to do that. But if you get beat with like the jab, that's going to be a problem. And the jab in this game is Christian McCaffrey. You just cannot allow yourself to get beat with the jab.
Right. Listen, we saw what Baltimore did to San Francisco on Christmas. We saw what the Packers did to him. We saw what the Lions did to him. For Christ's sakes, we saw what Arizona did to him. Even though they were resting all their players, they still lost to them in the last game. Their defense has been getting shredded. I don't see, like you talk about how, if they held Kansas City to 13 my ass. There is no way that guy, Patrick Mahomes, is not scoring in this game against that crappy defense. I don't care what you say. If they had Ryans still coaching that defense like they did a few years ago, they'd be better off. What they have now is nothing. I don't think they can stop this guy.
Well, that's the thing. Andy Reid's going to have a lot of opportunities because I think you can run the football here. The Kansas City Chiefs are very balanced in their usage of inside zone and outside zone. They use each one about 30%. And they should have success in either of those run types because the 49ers really have struggled to defend both of those key run types. They also run often out of multi-tight end sets. And then they can pass off of these things as well. The one thing they don't do, which would have success here, in my opinion, against this 49ers pass defense is utilize play action. But Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, they don't really buy into using as much play action. So they're going to just get the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands without the threat of a run play when Mahomes is dropping back to pass. But it's all the underneath stuff. They're just going to have a day picking apart this 49ers team. I would not expect a lot of explosives out of this Kansas City Chiefs offense. Patrick Mahomes' longest completion, potentially under some of these receivers, their longest completions under. This is going to be get the ball out of Mahomes' hands, move the ball down the field, maintain possession, and hopefully they're putting up points at the end of these drives. They cannot afford to fall behind. They're not built to overcome those deficits. They're only 2-4 this year when they trail by more than 7 points, whereas in years past they've gone 5-1. They won 3 straight in the playoffs, being down by double digits. So they have to come out here, establish their offense, stay on the football field, and score at the end of these drives and never let off the gas.
Well, that's where they've been in all these games. They've just come out and kicked everyone's ass. We'll see if they can do it against San Francisco in Las Vegas. We'll come back and wrap it up with Warren Sharp.
Thought that Mike would maybe go in a different direction or at least listen to some people with some different ideas.
If you were going to retain Mike Tomlin as coach, and I believe with both feet that you shouldn't let him really anywhere near this hire. that he had proved over the years that this was not an area of comfort or expertise for him.
Ferrall Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Oh, it's a beautiful time. NBA players are going wild. If I had to guess, a lot of people are going to get real angry. No defense, no defense, no defense. See, I want people to understand this, okay? Because we're always honest. When I take that big pause, that means we're thinking about betting big.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
Well, look at the Heisman Trophy.
The early line.
And what it all means. Individual success.
You should have tried to get something for Anthony Rendon. Not bought at the deadline.
Newswire.
We're getting a lot of news, trades, cuts, and some movement in terms of starting quarterbacks,
Ferrall
backup quarterbacks.
Coast to Coast.
I want to watch great players make buckets and win games.
Game time
I
decisions.
have no idea what the heck the Blazers are doing and what they
In-game live.
Just
Prime
took 'em
time.
yard for a grand slam.
In the bottom of the fourth inning in a 12-2 baseball game. We got football scores going on at Wrigley right now.
Sports Rage
That was
Late
good betting.
Night.
We waited for the 1.5. We got paid.
We did.
Didn't like the 2.5. Jumped on
There's
it.
no taking weeks off in golf betting ever. These are the best weeks to bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
So, Warren, what were you most surprised about? McDonald getting the Seattle job and not Quinn. Quinn getting the Washington job and not McDonald, who was in the Beltway. Ben Johnson staying with the Lions, or the Steelers actually hiring Art Smith with all of his genius and performance in Atlanta.
Well, look, I'll start with the last one first. I think Art Smith actually a great fit for the Pittsburgh Steelers and what they're looking to do offensively. I know he might not have been creative enough with the weapons that they have there from the passing attack down in Atlanta, but he's designed some decent offenses in the past. And I think with what he's going to be asked to do in Pittsburgh, I think he's going to do just a fine job. Mike Tomlin wants him to run the football. He's going to oblige and run the football creatively. I think I'm going to enjoy watching his blocking scheme. So that one's not a surprise to me that much. I actually think that it's a pretty good fit. What surprises me a lot is the fact that Washington, the Commanders, end up having to settle for Dan Quinn. And I do believe that that's what that is. That's settling for Dan Quinn. I think that they had their sights set on some better candidates out there, and they just weren't able to make that happen. And so that, to me, is a little bit of a loss for the Washington fan base having to deal with Dan Quinn. Not that he might not work a little bit better. I do think in giving some of these guys second chances, but I just don't know that I love that all that much. As it relates to Ben Johnson staying, that is a little bit surprising given the options were there. Both last year, he had several head coaching interviews. This year, he did as well. But the thing that we'll never know is which of those places that he interviewed actually was going to give him the type of money that he's interested in getting, as well as the type of control that he's looking for. I mean, you can interview with a lot of places, and the actual offer might not be something all that interesting. So us acting and thinking that we know that there's these 5 great offers from teams this year, and he's a fool to turn all of them down. We don't really know exactly what they were looking to give him. And then Mike McDonald landing in Seattle, I do think that's almost a perfect fit. Like that's great for him to go out there. Another defensive-oriented coach, though.
All right, we'll see you in Las Vegas next week, Warren. Great job today. My man, have a safe trip out to Sin City.